Hello and welcome to day 6 of the Content Mojo Challenge. How's it going? Have you got your blog post almost done, or are you like me with it about 900 words? So it's still got a little bit of work to do. I'm hoping to be able to knock the rest of it off this morning and then start doing the editing and things like that. Later today and then tomorrow. So I'm definitely running out of time. I wonder if you're like me. Anyway, we have the world woken up today to what appears to be a different world. I'm not going to make any political comment. I'm not even American, but it does seem to have affected the entire world, the American election. So it will be interesting to see how it goes going forward. But it does feel a little bit like we all have a bit of a hangover now. So anyway, we will see what happens. As long as we all stay true to who we are, then nothing super bad can happen, we hope. Anyway, all right. Now, what do I want to talk about today? So it's editing. Now, we're at the end of the time where you should have got plenty of words down. So what we need to be doing is editing and thinking about people are going to be reading this, and we want it to be the kind of content, like an epic piece of content, and we want it to have a life of its own, one where it can stand up and people want to read it. It's quality. So in order to do that, we need to do some editing. There's lots of ways you can do that. You can read it aloud to somebody or to yourself. I've often found when I read something aloud that I pick up those things where I think, oh, but I didn't, that's not, no. And you go back and change it. Get other people to read it. That's a great way. Stepping away from the computer and actually leaving it for a few hours or even 24 hours and then coming back, you'll pick up some of those mistakes where, you read what you think it should say because you're so close to it, rather than what is actually written there, because you know what you meant to say. Even things like missing out some of the small conjunction words and things like that, like it and the and those sort of things, just obvious stuff which you won't necessarily pick up when you do your first read through unless you've had some time away from it, because you'll just read what you think should be there. The cat's just come up again. So go and do a little bit of editing. At the same time as saying that, the other thing I wanted to say about editing is don't be a perfectionist, okay? Because mostly what perfectionism does is stop you actually finishing your creativity, being that creative being that you need to be, because you won't post your post. And that's the last thing I want you to do today, is actually get that post up in the next 48 hours. And if you're struggling with perfectionism, it's never going to be right and you'll never actually post it. So the aim of this challenge is that you post a blog post, and that's not going to happen if you suffer from perfectionism too much. So make sure you do that. Okay. I've just got Simon's just turned up again after dropping the kids off and trying to make me smile by pulling silly faces. Anyway, so think about that. Don't worry about perfectionism. Don't stress over it. In fact, near enough is better than perfect in this case, because we actually just want to get it out there. But at the same time, I would like you to temper that with some editing, whether you give it to somebody else to edit, whether you do a bit of editing yourself by stepping away and coming back. Reading aloud is a really good idea. When you read aloud as well, that also helps you make sure that you've written it in a way that should be written for the web. Unless you're writing an academic piece, we should be writing at a sort of grade 6 level, because that flows the best and it covers, the broader spectrum of people who might be reading your blog post in the future. I think, as I said last time when I was talking about this, you want a Harry Potter page turner rather than a War and Peace, having people kind of having to drag themselves through it to get to the end. You want something they really want to get to the end of, and it's not too hard to read, because then you'll actually get more consumption of your message. People will actually read it, and that's what we're after. So reading aloud does help you make sure that the voice you're using when you're writing is actually a conversational voice, and the studies have all shown that that's the most successful way to get this kind of style of writing that we're doing actually consumed by your audience. So reading aloud does actually help you check that you are writing in a conversational form. Okay, so do all of those things. When you do send it to someone else, ask for constructive criticism, because you do want to find people who are not afraid to actually say, actually, this paragraph didn't work for me or whatever, and give you some reasons why, because that's how we improve. If you always sent your stuff to people who said, oh, it's awesome, it's great, it's fantastic, everything you do is great, then you're never actually going to learn, you're never going to improve, you won't evolve into, a better writer by continuing to do this over and over again. You could just continue to turn out things that aren't great if you don't learn from your mistakes, you don't make changes. And having a constructive criticism from other people is one of the ways to help you do that. So make sure when you choose someone or some people to send it to that you do that. You can also ask in the group, see if there's some people here who are willing to read it, and of course I think we all are, so feel free to even post it and put a link up and we'll go read it. That's the other thing, when you post it, a lot of people, I've done a lot of work with lots of small businesses for many years, and many of them are really nervous about hitting post or even just to turn their website on, because they think the moment you do that, you're going to get this flood of lots and lots of people who are going to appear on your website and be reading it, and if there's mistakes, they're going to see it, and it's just like, the reality is there are, I couldn't even tell you, millions of pages being published on the web every day, literally millions. If you think that your page is going to somehow bubble to the top and people are going to see it, it's highly unlikely, really very, very unlikely. I do plenty of things where I actually even do it live. I'll even fiddle with my website live. If I'm creating a new website, I'll do it all live. I won't bother hiding it behind an under construction thing, because as a rule, people don't know that I'm creating it unless I tell them, and that's a different kettle of fish again. So just don't get all head up with that hitting publish either and posting it, because once you've published, unless you tell people it's there, they're probably not going to find it by themselves straight away, at least not in that first few weeks. And you actually have to do something in order to get people to see it, unless you've got a highly trafficked website, of course, that's the caveat there. But most of us, I think, we don't have thousands of people visiting our website a day. So if I was you, I would just put a link up into the group, and we can get constructive criticism that way. I've got the cat, trying to stop the cat walking across, because she'll also knock over the thing. So do publish, and do get us some help from us in the group if you want, because I'm sure we're all more than prepared to go and read and give you some constructive feedback. Right, things like, I've got a little list over here, things like Grammarly. We talked about that again last time as well. That's a really good way to make sure that your grammar obviously is correct. It goes and corrects all of that, because it's one thing to have a spell checker, but they don't check that you've used the right word if it's the same word. Like if it's spelt correctly, then it's still going to come up as fine, but maybe it's the wrong word in that context. It's things like school, and where you've got multiple versions of school, of how you can different versions of the word school, for example. There are lots of other examples, but that was the only one that came to my mind, which is a bit strange. Anyway, so I can see that one person's actually watching it live. Just wondering who it is. If you want to leave a comment, that'd be great. Because I can't see. It's probably the settings you have in your Facebook as to probably is one part of the privacy settings when you first join a Facebook Live. Less is more. That's the other thing I want to talk about. So it sounds a little contradictory when we're talking about trying to get as many words on that page as possible, which is what we're trying to do. In fact, we're trying to get a minimum of 1,500 words, a minimum. However, that doesn't mean that we just need to go on and on and on and on and on, which is something I'm very guilty of doing, not just in text, but also when I'm chatting, just go on and on and on. However, if we want this piece of writing to be something of quality, then actually less is more. If you can say the same thing in one sentence that you've just done a whole paragraph, it is possible that it would flow better if you can actually reduce it. but trying to still stay within the minimum of 1,500 words. So it's one of the trickiest things to do as a writer, and it's a skill that comes over time, and I certainly am not very good at it. I can even remember at university when we actually had maximum word counts. You know, the lecturer didn't want any more than X number of words. They had a minimum and a maximum word count, probably because they had to read like hundreds of whatever the paper we were writing. And I'd get very excited because I'd used my fabulous vocabulary and had lots and lots of words, and then realise, oh yay, I've got this thing and it's actually more words than it's supposed to be. Now all I have to do is take some out. That is one of the hardest things that I do in my work, as well as when I was at university, was actually to take words out, because you become quite attached to them. They become like your babies, and I love that sentence and I love the way that flowed. And I don't know that I can take bits out, but if you can develop that as a skill, working out how to remove some things, it'll actually work in your favour. Especially if it doesn't take away from the actual work and what you're trying to say, but just makes it more succinct, perhaps. So think about that a little bit, but don't get too tied up about it. Call to action. Now, I have mentioned that over this week, but having some kind of call to action somewhere around your blog post, maybe even weaved into your blog post, is a great idea, because then there's a purpose for what you've written, not just to entertain or educate, but also to do something towards your business, whether it's trying to encourage people to sign up for something like a mailing list, or whether you're trying to say you could run a webinar or whatever and you get people to sign up to that. You could have a product that you're selling which is related to the blog post in some way. Anything like that. There's a bunch of things that you could do. You could even create a particular checklist which is relevant to this blog post. In fact, that's actually like an advanced technique that people do all the time now, and that is to, if you're putting the time and effort into creating an epic blog post, that you actually create some sort of checklist or giveaway of some sort where people will provide their name and email address, and you'll in return give them this this giveaway that's of good value, great value, that will help them, like an action list or something based on what they've done. But it's all very relevant. So, you know, they might have done a Google search, land on this blog post to get an answer for X, Y, Z, and then in order, they get to the end of the blog post, that was great, and oh look, they're even going to give me the checklist, so I've now got the 6 points that were put in this blog post. I can just tick them off to make sure that I'm getting, that done, or whatever your blog post is about. So if you can have all of that all tied in and being very similar and being very all related, you'll find you get a much, much higher conversion. Because if people land on your website because they want to know about, I don't know, dog shampooing, and then you have a checklist where it's, say it's the review of the top 6 dog shampoos as a giveaway, then people are more likely to download that. Even if your whole blog post had been how to do the best dog shampoo, like how to actually physically do it, and your download was actually a review of the 6 top shampoos available for shampooing your dog, then you see how it all fits together. So the people who, in our market, in online marketing, who do that the best actually get massive results from that, because you can see how smooth it is. That's Anyway, think about that, whether you can quickly come up with a checklist or something that would tie into what you've written, because that would be a great way to start filling your email list, which is something we could talk about at some stage as well, because it's really important for your business. All right, now, Post-it. That was the last one, which I have already actually mentioned, which is publishing. So that's cool. So I lost my connection for a sec. I'm not sure what happened there. The internet must have gone a little bit funky. The last thing I just wanted to talk about was an email I sent out yesterday, which is to do with a webinar I'm going to run on Sunday Australian time. I think that's evening in America and probably in England as well. Somebody put their thumb up, and now I have 2 people. Yay! So I'm going to do the webinar. Frankie and I talked about it a couple of days ago, and it was a great idea of hers that we do some kind of webinar where I can actually walk you through outsourcing the images. And the reality is, if you're building a business online, you can't ever think you're going to do everything. Hey, Frankie. Oh, yes, the time change is a bit funny. The comment from Frankie was about the time change, and it's thrown things a little bit, because in America, I think on Sunday they came out of daylight savings, whereas we're in daylight savings, so it's all... Anyway, so if you are going to seriously build a business online or continue to grow the one you have, the best way for growth is for you to leverage some of your time, which means you don't do everything. If images are not your thing, or if you can easily give that to somebody else, then you should. So anyway, I'll talk about that in the webinar. I would like to mention the same can be said for what we're doing this week. I think there is ways that you can outsource what we're talking about. It's not necessarily easier unless you set up a good framework for making that happen. I would suggest that because what we're talking about is you creating, it's your personality. So when we're writing these blog posts, it's actually what you think and feel, and that's what I'm hoping is going to come across, because you're talking, writing conversationally. That's all really important. And if you were to outsource that, and you can, there are ways you could do it where you can still keep your personality. And maybe I'll run a webinar about that in the next time we run this in the beginning of December. If you're all interested in that, then I might do that, because that might also enable you to create more, or to be more consistent with your creation of content for your website, for all the amazing reasons we've talked about in the past and why this is so important. So if you're interested in that, let me know. But otherwise, I'd love to see you on Sunday. I will try and remember to give lots of reminders about it coming up. We're going to do it in a Zoom room, which just means that you click on the link at the appropriate time, and it's just like a meeting room. It'll just open up and you'll be there. Now, sometimes it opens up and everybody's camera turns on, so it's like a whole conference room, as if we're all sitting around a table having a meeting. However, I've turned it off, the image, except for just me. I think I can turn them on later if we need to, if you want me to. But I've found that a lot of people get a bit of a surprise when they first log into a webinar, and they see not only the presenter's face, but they see their faces and their face and everyone else's, and they say, oh, I wasn't ready, I haven't got my face on, or whatever. Especially girls, we find that a little bit confronting sometimes. Maybe we're still in our pajamas, or we've got our curlers or something, I don't know. So that's something you won't need to worry about. So I've turned it off so the video won't come on straight away for the attendees. But you will all have the ability to talk to me, so you'll be muted when you first come in, and then I can release it and we can chat and whatever as well. So we might open it up to a big sort of round table Q&A towards the end, so that we can get a bit of communication happening, which would be awesome. All right, so I hope you're a little bit excited about that. I am. So those blog posts, I hope you've probably got as much work to do as me, possibly. I know Frankie's sort of was way ahead, and now she's redone everything. I noticed on Facebook this morning, so I'm not sure what Gavin's up to now, but yes, this time around we don't seem to have as many people jumping on doing things, but I'm hoping you're all still ticking around away in the background creating your content. Now, does either of you right now have any questions? If so, let me know by putting a comment, and I can answer them. Otherwise, I think we need to be using some of this time to create our blog post, finish our blog post, so we can start editing and posting, because that's ultimately the aim of this game, especially this week, is to post those blog posts. Nice coffee. All right, so no questions. If not, I will pop off and go and get some of my blog posts finished. As I'm supposed to be leading this challenge, I should probably get mine done. So I'm wrestling with that at the moment. I think I'm up to about 600 words. No, 900 words. So still got a lot to do. Anyway, all right. Take care. Love you all. Well done. Keep plugging away. It really is worth it. And I'll see you tomorrow. And put the webinar in your diary, because I'd really like to see you there. All right. Take care. Ciao.